Welcome to session 10 of the story Genesis. Go ahead and get your Bible if you haven't already. Today we are reading one of the strangest stories in the Bible. We've already gotten to know Jacob, the grandson of Abraham. We've learned about his, less than upright character, his way of cheating and tricking people. Despite his deceitfulness, though, we know that he is the one chosen and blessed by God. But that blessing has also brought conflict between Jacob and almost everyone else in his life. We're going to look at two stories in Genesis this week. One is in chapter 32 and one chapter 33. Chapter 32 shows us Jacob wrestling with, we'll get to that in a minute. And then chapter 3 lets us know what happens when Jacob finally confronts his brother Esau, the brother he cheated, the brother who hates him. The last time that the brothers were together, some 20 years ago in the timeline of the story, Jacob stole the blessing of the firstborn son, the blessing that rightly should have gone to Esau, the older brother. Esau is so furious. He wants to kill his brother, so Jacob runs away empty-handed. In the 20 years that follow, though, God blessed Jacob, and Jacob prospers. Finally, after all of this time, God tells Jacob to go back home. At the start of Genesis 32, Jacob begins the journey home, where Esau still lives, and he's met by God's angels. The presence of angels, their presence can only mean that God is with him. But anytime angels show up, there's more going on here than a road trip. God is at work. Jacob sends messengers ahead to Esau, and they tell Esau that Jacob is wealthy now, and Jacob wants to reconcile with Esau. Jacob talks about himself using the word servant, refers to himself as a servant, and he even calls Esau Lord, my Lord. What a different attitude Jacob has now than when they were boys. The messengers that Jacob sends out, they return with the news that Esau says he'll be there soon, and he is bringing 400 men. Now for Jacob, who knows very well what he did to his brother, for Jacob, that's a pretty scary picture. Esau coming with 400 men. But what would you expect after all the hurt that Jacob caused Esau? Jacob prays. Jacob prays to God, confessing that he knows he's not worthy of God's steadfast love and faithfulness. But in the prayer, Jacob claims the promise that God made of blessing. Jacob holds on and claims that promise in his prayer. Deliver me, Jacob prays, deliver me from the hand of my brother. And then he sends a huge present of livestock and cattle to Esau, hoping to ease Esau's anger before they actually meet face to face. So let's look now at chapter 32. Let's start at verse 22. So Jacob is on the way now to meet with Esau. That same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck Jacob on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. A man wrestled with Jacob? What man? Who is this? Where does he come from? Scholars are divided on how to interpret this. Some think it's a demon. Some think it's an angel. The Bible only says a man. Maybe the man's identity isn't supposed to be known for sure to Jacob or to us, but clearly, somehow, God is present in this struggle. Jacob and the man fight all night long, and they seem evenly matched because neither one wins. The man strikes Jacob's hip, putting it out of joint. The man is able to wound Jacob, but the man can't get away from Jacob. "Let me go, for the day is breaking," he says. Then Jacob, the one who, remember earlier, had wrestled a blessing from his elderly blind father, well, now he wrestles a blessing from the man. The man gives Jacob the blessing not only of a new name, but a new identity as well. Jacob is no longer to be the supplanter, the one who takes over. Now he is to be Israel. That name means something like the one who struggles with God. Neither the man nor Jacob win the fight, but neither loses either. As day breaks, Jacob leaves blessed, but he will carry that wound forever. Jacob realized that somehow in this struggle he has seen God face to face, and he lived. Let's get ready with Jacob to meet his brother Esau face to face. Esau has had 20 years to plan his revenge. Read with me now in chapter 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. Bowing to the ground 7 times before he got close to Esau. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Wait, maybe I need to make sure I've got the right thing here. No, this is it. This is what happens. Who would have thought this? Listen again at verse 4. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. This is Esau, the one who was so hurt and so wronged? When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And finally Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Notice all the way through this, oh my goodness, he is treating Esau as if Esau is the important one. And do you notice that Jacob keeps calling Esau my Lord, but Esau calls Jacob my brother. Keeping on going here in verse 10, Jacob said, "No, please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand. For truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. Please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." Oh my goodness. Jacob does everything he can to make himself subservient to Esau, hoping that will ease Esau's anger. But that isn't necessary. What a miracle. Esau has forgiven him. He not only forgives him, but he invites Jacob and his family to travel together. "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." Wow. Esau welcomes a renewed relationship with Jacob. Chapter 33 goes on a little bit longer, but it ends as Jacob welcomes the forgiveness of Esau. But sadly, Jacob has one more trick to play on Esau. Jacob, you see, he needs to slow down his pace so that he can care for the family and the livestock. They can't quite keep up and walk as fast. So Jacob says to Esau, "You go on ahead, and I'll stay back and keep them going, and we'll meet up later, me and you." And Esau apparently believes that, and so they part company. The story of these two encounters, Jacob and the mysterious wrestler, Jacob and his brother, these two stories, well, they're really one larger story. In the first half, the part about the fight, Jacob knows, and we know, that the encounter with this mysterious man, somehow, it's really an encounter with God. And it's not just an encounter, it's a struggle. God's presence here it's not like sweet angels coming and offering comfort. No, this is terrifying. But still, Jacob holds his own in the fight. He doesn't lose, but he comes away crippled. He doesn't win, but he comes away with a blessing, a new name, a new identity. In the second part of the story, meeting Esau, Jacob sees the forgiveness of God. In verse 10, Jacob tells Esau, "To see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor." This time, it's not the terrifying presence of God that Jacob sees, but it is the grace of God in the forgiveness that his brother offers. In order for the old Jacob to become the new Israel, he has to struggle. He has to struggle, but not lose. In order for the new Jacob, now called Israel, in order for him to understand this new limp, which doesn't really seem like a blessing, in order for him to understand this new limp, he has to begin to look at his brother differently. Jacob has to put himself in a position lower than his brother and has to beg for forgiveness. This wound, this limp that somehow is part of a blessing, it has to teach Jacob that he's not above his brother, or maybe not above anyone for that matter. The limp does end up a blessing, allowing him to be in relationship. We've come to the end of Jacob's part of the story. God's promise, it still belongs to this family, and it will be carried on next week in Jacob's next to youngest son. Thanks for watching and thinking together today. Don't miss next week's session of the story. If you have time between now and then, you might want to find a colorful shirt or jacket or even a multicolored blanket that you can wrap up in next week as you get to know Abraham's great grandson. See you then.